Okay, so I recently did my top 5 UFC fights, which I want to see in 2023, and now we are switching over to the sweet science in the top 5 fights that I want to see for boxing in 2023. Now, I'll be honest, going through these the boxing fights, it's actually a lot easier than it was remarkably with the MMA fights. Reason being, one, I mean, mostly none of these guys fight each other, but also I actually feel there's a lot more talent in the in some of the divisions in boxing. I think there are a lot of fights to make for a lot of weights. There isn't many. So, like for example, in MMA, in the UFC specifically, the light heavyweight division's kind of been a bit rough recently. So there aren't many fights to make there. Same middleweight, really. Welterweight's okay, but again, there's only really one or two fights that you're really bothered about. In boxing, there are a lot more, which is why it's more frustrating to me that we don't see more fights. But we'll see what happens now. So, starting off at number 5. Now, this one may come as a surprise that it's so low down. And I will say this as well. These fights on here, most of them are pretty typical. And that's like I said, because there's many obvious fights out there. But I couldn't really ignore. Like, I feel like I could ignore some obvious fights in MMA. There's obviously certain ones I couldn't, like the Jones and Garnu one. But most of them I couldn't do it. But this one's a shocker because it's quite low down. And it's a shocker for many reasons. Obviously, it's a huge, huge fight with two amazing fighters, and it will also be an undisputed fight. But that is Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev. Now, this could change and could get caught up by Anthony Yarde if he beats Beterbiev in a few weeks' time. However, I'm thinking that that this would be an unbelievable fight, though. First of all, Beterbiev 18-0 with 18 KOs. Bivol 21-0 with 11 KOs. Recently, getting that big win over Canelo Alvarez, which I listed as my best moment, I think, of boxing last year. And I think it's a great fight for many reasons. Obviously, there's a big age difference between them. Beterbiev being the much older opponent. He is Beterbiev, I think he's about 37, he is. And then if you compare Dmitry Bivol to him, Dmitry Bivol is 31. So, there's a big age difference between them. And Bivol, spry in his prime. Beterbiev, monstrous puncher, who is knocking people out and looked amazing still at his age. I say prime, I mean, he pretty much is still doing as good as he has ever been doing Beterbiev, so I don't think this is really an out of form, out of shape, not in his prime Beterbiev. He is certainly still delivering and is one of the elite light heavyweights, probably the best, to be honest with you, at the moment. As much as I like Bivol, I feel like I don't know, I feel Beterbiev just has something more about him. But I think this would be a great fight, though. Two absolute monstrous fighters. Two guys who I think really would. I think this type of fight, you very rarely get a fight where you get two guys who are. They just look like killers, you know. You got Beterbiev, who is obviously from. I think he's sort of from Chechnya in Russia. And then Bivol, on the other side, is from, I think it's Soviet Union. I'm pretty sure he's kind of, I feel like he's Russian as well. Yeah, he is Russian. So you've got two Russians going at it as well. So this would be a great fight. Imagine having this fight in Russia. It would be ginormous. So I think this would be an amazing fight to have. It's very low down on my list, but that's only because I think the 4 fights above it are amazing. But I know that this is the fight to make. And I'd love to see this fight in the light heavyweight division. I don't think there's many other fights that would really intrigue or capture the public's mind the way this does. So yeah, Beterbiev, Bivol, my number 5 pick. Going on to number 4, I've got Shakur Stevenson versus Devin Haney. This, again, low down, but I think there would be a real, there's an intrigue to this fight. These two are very similar. I think they've sparred a few times as well. Devin Haney is obviously Shakur Stevenson is coming up to 135. Devin Haney is the king there, undisputed. He's set to be fighting Lomachenko, but I think this fight will be so intriguing to me. These two are so slick and rarely ever get touched. I think Haney's a lot more susceptible than Stevenson is. Shakur's a bit more. What would be the word? He's a bit more like Floyd. You know, you can't. He's airtight. You can't touch him. Devin Haney gets touched a lot. You know, he's very good at avoiding certain shots, but sometimes you kind of find when he tries to spin, he'll gets hit a lot down the middle as well with straight shots. There's a lot that Haney could still needs to improve on, but he's a fantastic fighter. Haney, don't get twisted. Two very, very young fighters as well, which I think is important to point out. Two guys who I think, like I said, very similar style. And this is why I would love to see this fight. Similar to, there's another fight on my list where I have a similar sort of thought process in this. But with Devin Haney, he started his career very, very young, had a lot of spotlight quite young. Not like to the point of like what an Anthony Joshua was, where it was like everybody's talking about him. But you look at him now, he's 24 years old, and to achieve what he has already, I think speaks a lot to the talent and the dedication that he has. And you look at Shakur Stevenson, he's 25 years old. These two are very young and have achieved so much in their careers already. And yeah, I think intriguing. This would be such an intriguing fight. You got Southpaw versus Orthodox. Also, and people don't ever buy this when it comes to when it comes to these big fights. The nationality of two fighters, when they're both from the same country, there's a excuse me, a certain intrigue to it, which I don't think you have. It's what makes the AJ and Fury fight so big when it was before. It's what more so makes another fight, and this is quite intriguing as well. But yeah, I'd love though to see this fight so much. Honestly, if I was talking to just personality, my personal preference, I think this is the fight to make, this fourth best fight to make, because of the other fights on this list. But I do think that if I could pick any fights at all, this would probably be my second, if I'm being honest with you. I just love this fight. They're two young fighters, two guys, like I said, similar style, both very slick, don't get touched, both fantastic at putting their shots together, both look pretty untouchable in their fights. The one thing Haney's had is that he had that time against Linares where he wobbled a bit, but other than that, nobody's been able to get near him. And similar with Stevenson, nobody's been able to touch him recently. So I think, yeah, this would be an amazing fight, and I'd love to see this for all the belts. I think if the Haney-Lomachenko fight gets made, which it looks like it will do, I personally, I think I would favour Haney. At the moment, I'm saying this, but I would favour Haney to get through that. But yeah, me personally, I think should Haney get through it, I think it's gonna sound dumb because we're talking about Lomachenko here, but Lomachenko could be a good little test for Haney in fighting a very tricky southpaw. So yeah, I would love to see this fight though. Like I said, I think it's an amazing fight, and it deserves a big one. It deserves an MSG or something like that, because I think it deserves that big stage. But yeah, Haney Stevenson, note my number 4 most anticipated fight of 2023, and we're getting into number 3. Number 3 is Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis. Now, out of all the fights on this list, currently this looks actually the most likely to happen, because obviously with alright, first of all, there's a whole thing with Tank recently with his I think it's best to say maybe he's out of ring, not antics, but just what's been going on with him. He obviously does have a fight coming up, and I do think with Tank as well, he tends to get involved in these type of things a lot, where I don't know, it just always seems to happen with him. I don't know what it is, but he kind of has been. I don't know if he's been cleared or whatever happened, but we obviously had a whole thing with his partner. But with whatever happened, it is seemingly in the past now, and he's obviously set to fight Hector Luis Garcia on the 7th of January. And an excellent fight. Let me rephrase that actually. This Garcia fight did not, Hector Luis Garcia and Ryan Garcia, Tank's an excellent fight. The Hector Luis Garcia fight, I think, is just a warm up for Tank, and he'll get through him pretty easily, probably knock him out in about 5 rounds. And when we get into the Ryan Garcia and Tank fight, however, this is a huge fight. First of all, intriguing because none of these guys actually hold any world titles. And with Garcia, he's had a bit of a weird trajectory, I think, Ryan Garcia. Obviously, he's an incredibly talented fighter. People like to pretend that he's not, but he is. He is definitely one of the best lightweights in the world. He's not proven himself against the best yet. Not in the way you saw how Devin Haney did when he fought Kambosos. I know Kambosos maybe isn't the best, but he is somebody who did beat Teofimo, who was the guy who beat the guy in Lomachenko. So you got to respect it. And you're looking at Garcia's last 3 fights. He had to fight with Luke Campbell, where he got through it, a fantastic win. He then won a unanimous decision against Emmanuel Tagu. And then he beat Javier Fortuna in his last fight via KO. So he's looked good, but I think we just need to see him step up. And Tank has been the fight he's wanted for a long time. Tank's wanted the fight for a long time because they're both very big names in boxing. They both sell out arenas. So I think this would be such an intriguing fight. Tank's obviously got the power, explosive, quick, and Garcia's got the speed. I think a lot of people favour Tank in this because of the power that he does have and the explosiveness and his skill. And Garcia is very susceptible. He does stand up very straight. It reminds me a lot of Amir Khan in some ways. And I just think, yeah, and he got dropped by Luke Campbell. So I think the argument is if he can do that, what can Tank do? But, styles make fights. And I do think it'd be intriguing to see how... First of all, the ticket sales are how this fight does in compared to maybe other fights, because it isn't like there's no more titles online if this happens, but it's such a huge fight that it doesn't matter, and it shows that the belts don't really matter. It's about the names. It's about Israel Adesanya said this about when he was in middleweight and coming up, saying it's not about the belts, it's about the names that you collect, and I think that's the important thing in this fight. It's a legacy fight for both of these, even at such, I say young stages. I think Tank's coming to his prime. Garcia's getting the same thing, so we're at a point where they should be fine. I think it'd be such an intriguing fight. I think, like I said, two good personalities as well. They both will probably go back and forth with each other. Both big names. They both sell out arenas, but everybody knows who they are. True. A promoter's dream, this fight. I think it's an excellent fight. And I think that's why it's been built up. And I do think it will happen next. I think it's the fight to make. And I look forward to it. When it does happen, an exciting clash. Like I said, this is why I love this Division 135 so much. We're already... that's the third on my list. And I've already got one on there, Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney. That's why I think this division is the best division in boxing at the moment. But yeah, Tank, Garcia, my number 3 pick. My number 2 pick is probably one that I actually was at one point contemplating putting number 5, but then I thought that would not make any sense. Number 1 for a lot of people, this one, and that is Usyk versus Fury, the undisputed fight for all the belts at heavyweight. A fight that... for a lot of people, they would have liked to see Joshua and Fury. Maybe they would like to see Joshua and Wilder. Maybe it would have been a Wilder Usyk. I don't know. There's so many ways this crazy division could have gone. It's gone in the way of Usyk Fury for all the belts. Now this has to happen now. With Tyson Fury, don't know what he's going to do really. He's very back and forth on what he says. We all know this. Usyk's been consistent. Usyk, I think, wants to fight, but obviously he couldn't fight last time because of the injury. So there's so many, I think, interesting factors in this fight. First of all, there isn't really bad blood between them, but Fury kind of will talk up Usyk and then talk down on Usyk, saying that he's too small, but then saying, it doesn't matter about the size. It's this very confusing guy, Tyson Fury, as we all know. But it's just one of those things. He's very confusing in these senses. So I'm interested to see how the mind games work. He tried, obviously. Usyk did get in the ring with when Fury beat Chisora. Fury was talking all sorts to him, and he was just sort of smiling at him. So I think it shows it's not going to affect Usyk at all, especially when his country is literally at war. So I think those things help him. Stylistically, it's an interesting fight. Obviously, Usyk is a mover in there. He's very quick, He's obviously a southpaw. His engine's fantastic, very slick boxer. A man who can put a pressure on you and keep it at you, doesn't fade in the fight, doesn't tire. Has shown some weaknesses to the body recently, but I still don't think that's really something that's a huge gaping weakness for him. And for Tyson Fury, we know what Tyson Fury is. Big, long, has learnt since going to the Kronk to be a more exciting power puncher. Still very slick. Occasionally we see him go from southpaw to orthodox like he used to do. A very slick boxer, but I think he's a slick boxer against guys who he's much bigger than and guys who just haven't got the speed. I think the speed of Usyk will be a problem for Fury, in my opinion, in this fight. And I do think that with the fight, it may turn to a real horrible fight, but it also could be a real intriguing fight because you've got two very tactically astute fighters in there, and I think that is something that will make it interesting. I think in his fights, Fury makes more mistakes than Usyk has, especially recently, but I do think that Fury's size would be interesting. Will Usyk be able to do it, or will he just be too long, Fury? There's so many questions in this fight, and I do find it intriguing. It's a super fight as well. Everybody wants to see it. Talking about Saudi, I think wherever it is, it'd be great. This heavyweight division's been very fun these last few years, and I think it'd be great. This won't be the conclusion of it. Obviously, there'll be more fights to make, but I just think it feels like Fury wins. That's it. He talks about retiring. You may as well retire after this because I want to see him in Joshua, but at this point, I'm really at a point where I don't really blame Fury if he were to retire now. And if Usyk wins, I think he should do the same. To be honest, what more you got to achieve? You win an undisputed belt, you go off. Whoever wins, I mean, this is one of those where I just think whoever wins and whoever loses may just retire, because I don't know, unless it's a very, very close fight. In a case we could have a trilogy again with what Fury had with Wilder, maybe we have more. Maybe Fury wants to create more memories. I'm not sure, but an excellent fight though. Like I said, I think the boxing purist might love this fight. I think as a fight it may be horrible to watch, but I'm excited though for this one. This would be an excellent fight. Like I said, when you got two guys who have experienced, who have got that just ring generalship that Usyk and Fury have, I think it makes for an intriguing watch. So yeah, great fight though, Usyk and Fury. For a lot of people, it'd be number one, but it ain't number one for me, because my number one, and everybody knows, I'm pretty sure who knows boxing knows what this is going to be. There is only one fight I want to see in boxing today. If you could tell me I could have one, this is the one I want. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford. This fight has been vexing the whole of the boxing public, because you look at it. Crawford beats Sean Porter. You're thinking, okay, let's see what happens with Spence and Ugas. Spence beats Ugas. He calls Crawford out, says he wants to take his bout. He's going to go over and take his too. And then nothing. We looked like it was going to happen. Now it isn't going to happen. And now we look like there was still some wormies now that's going to happen again. Obviously, with Crawford, he fought Avanesian. Talking about Spence maybe fighting Crawford. Fighting Keith Thurman. There's talks also that it may still happen by April time. I don't know when this is going to happen, but I think it will happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen is the problem, and that's what's annoying. I think it is worse for Crawford because of his age. He's older. But for both of these guys, they need to get in the ring and get it on. In what I said about the Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney thing, about how them being the same nationality, same thing, and I think this is a similar thing with Crawford and Spence. These two are both from America, both African American. There's a certain intrigue to this fight, which you don't really get. Both dogs as well. You look at when those two confronted each other, there is no fear from either of those two. They are both, some guys you could just see they have that fire, that dog in them, and I think you can see that with Spence and Crawford. They're not afraid of nobody. They don't duck anybody. No matter who people say about Crawford ducking Spence or Spence ducking Crawford, nobody's scared or nobody's ducking nobody. These are two fantastic fighters. It is just politics. That is all it is. There is no thing about one fighter being afraid of the other. They're both elite. They're both two of the best fighters in the world. And an amazing fight, like I said. Spence's last fight was unbelievable against Ugas. The pace he set, the way he ran through him, obviously being the southpaw, the way he goes to the body, he's relentless. And with Crawford being a switch hitter, a slip boxer, a man who's a fantastic finisher, he's a precise puncher. When he has you hurt, he just knows the right shots to pick at the right time. Yeah, an elite fighter, Terence Crawford, one of the best ever. So I think this is a great fight regardless, and I hope that neither of these guys go up 154. I think maybe one day they can do it after this fight, but I want to see this fight first. So yeah, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, my obvious number one pick for the fight to make for me in 2023 for boxing. Should be a fun year. I hope that we get all these fights. On his prediction, if I'm looking at it, I think Usyk Fury gets made. I think Tank Garcia gets made. I'm not sure about Shakur and Devin Haney. I think Haney might go up in weight. I hope Spence Crawford gets made, and I would say Bivol Beterbiev will get made depending on if Beterbiev gets through yards. So yeah, but those are just my like I said, top 5 boxing fights to see in 2023. And yeah, until next time.